welcome back to the deep dive. If you're one of those ambitious minds getting ready for the UPSC exams, you know better than anyone how important it is to really get a handle on, like, the big picture of what's going on in the world, especially when it comes to where India fits in, right? And all the things that affect how well our society is doing.
Exactly.
So today we are going deep, deep, deep into a pretty important report.
Oh, yeah.
It just came out. The World Happiness Report.
2025.
2025.
Yes. Fresh off the press from the Wellbeing Research Centre at the University of Oxford.
At the University of Oxford, yep. So basically, what we're trying to do today is, like, give you the cheat sheet, right? We want to pull out the really juicy insights from this report.
Right.
About, how happiness is trending globally.
Yeah.
But, of course, we got to focus on India.
Absolutely.
How are we doing? And we're going to go, like, beyond just looking at where we are in the ranking.
Yeah.
We're going to try to, like, really figure out what's making those numbers what they are.
Absolutely.
And just to kind of get your brains going right from the start.
Okay.
India's ranking actually got better.
Okay. Good.
Which is good news.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that's super interesting, maybe even a little weird.
Okay.
We're still behind some of our neighbors.
Okay.
Including Pakistan.
Interesting.
Even though, on paper, our economy and our government seem to be doing better than theirs. So that's the big question we're going to tackle today. What's really going on here? What's the story beneath the surface?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the report actually gives us some clues to kind of unpack that a little bit. But maybe before we get to that, let's set the stage. Like, what's happening globally?
Yeah.
The big picture of happiness.
Okay.
So Finland, once again, they're at the top.
Oh, surprise, surprise.
8 years in a row, they are the happiest country. And, you see that the Nordic countries, they really dominate the top spots, right?
It's like their thing.
Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, they're all up there. So they've clearly figured out something, right, in terms of how to create a society where people feel good.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not all about, just the usual suspects. There are some new faces in the top 10 this year, which is interesting.
Who made it?
So Costa Rica, they jumped up to 6th place. That's pretty impressive. And Mexico, they've actually broken into the top 10. They're at number 10 now. So it's not like happiness is just something for, like, the wealthy Western country.
Right.
There's something else going on.
It's more nuanced than that.
It's more nuanced than that, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Another thing that really stood out to me, Israel, they're ranked 8th, which is pretty high considering all the conflict that's going on there.
Right.
I mean, that really shows you that happiness, it's not just about, the absence of problems, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There's got to be something else, some kind of inner strength or resilience maybe that's helping them cope and even thrive in difficult circumstances.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Makes you think, yeah. Okay, so we have the happy campers. What about the other end of the spectrum?
Right. So sadly, Afghanistan remains the least happy country. And the situation there is, especially tough for women.
Right.
Sierra Leone and Lebanon are also facing some really big challenges when it comes to their people's happiness. And, this isn't just an isolated thing. The report actually points to a pretty worrying global trend, a decline in social support.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's a bit alarming, actually. 19% of young adults, they say they have absolutely no one they can rely on.
Wow. That's a lot of people feeling alone.
Yeah, it's a big chunk of the next generation basically feeling isolated. So you can't help but wonder what that means for the future, right? Like, how are we going to build strong communities if so many people feel disconnected?
Okay, so we've got this global picture of happiness, or I guess sometimes unhappiness. But for you, the UPSC aspirant out there, you need to know, like, how do they even measure this stuff? What's the method behind the madness?
Right. So the rankings are mainly based on this huge global survey, the Gallup World Poll. And then that data is analyzed by the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network.
Okay.
They use a bunch of different tools, but one of the key ones is this thing called the Cantrell ladder.
The Cantrell ladder. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so imagine a ladder, right? 10 rungs. 0 at the bottom, 10 at the top. 10 is like the best possible life you could imagine.
Got it.
And then they ask people, hey, where do you stand on that ladder right now? How's your life?
Okay.
So the 2025 report, the one we're talking about, it's using the average of the responses they got from 2022 to 2024.
Okay, 3 years of data. Makes sense.
Yeah. Now, they don't have like one single happiness index, where they just add up scores from different things.
Right.
But they have identified 6 key indicators that seem to be really closely linked to happiness.
Okay. So what are these magical ingredients for a happy life?
Well, first, you've got GDP per capita. That gives you a sense of how well the economy is doing.
Basic economic prosperity.
Right. Then there's healthy life expectancy, how long people are living and how healthy they are.
Makes sense.
Social support. Do people feel like they have someone to turn to when things get tough?
Yeah, that's huge.
Freedom to make life choices. Do people feel like they have control over their own lives?
Right. Autonomy.
Generosity, are people giving to others? This is often measured by things like donations.
Okay.
And finally, perceptions of corruption.
Oh, interesting.
How corrupt do people think their government and society are?
Okay, so basically, how much do you trust the system?
Exactly.
All right, so those are the 6 key indicators. Now let's zoom in on India, right? We saw our ranking went up, which is good news.
Yeah, definitely a positive sign. We're at 118th out of 147 countries. Up from where?
Up from 126th.
Out of
143 last year.
Okay. So we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah. And our overall score has gone up, too.
Yeah.
From 4.054 to 4.389.
Right. Not bad. But, as with most things, the headline numbers don't always tell the whole story. When we look at some of the specific indicators for India, it gets a little more complicated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not a simple picture.
So walk us through that.
Okay, so one thing that's really positive is that India actually does really well in areas related to, like, helping others,
Okay.
Like, in terms of donations, we rank 57th globally.
Wow, that's pretty high.
Yeah. And volunteering, we're 10th.
10th.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really impressive. And when it comes to helping a stranger, we're at 74th.
Okay. So that suggests that, like, deep down, we're a pretty generous and kind society.
Yeah, I think that's a fair interpretation. It seems like we have this strong sense of community and a willingness to support each other.
Right. But then there's this other side of the coin, right? The trust issue.
Yeah. The wallet return probability. That's where things get a little less rosy.
So basically, how likely are you to get your wallet back if you lose it?
Exactly. And in India, the chances aren't great, to be honest.
Okay, give us the numbers.
So if your neighbor finds your wallet, there's only we rank 115th.
Oof, not.
If a stranger finds it, 86th. And if the police find it, 93rd.
So basically, not that much better no matter who finds it.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lack of trust there,
Right. Both in, like, the people around us and in the institutions that are supposed to protect us.
Mm.
Okay, so that's a little concerning. But here's the biggest head scratcher of all.
Yeah.
Remember how we started by saying that India is still behind some of our neighbors in the happiness rankings?
I do, yeah.
Like Pakistan?
Right.
This is where it gets really interesting, especially for you UPSC folks who are always comparing India to other countries. On paper, India's economy is doing better than Pakistan's. Our per capita income in 2023 was much higher.
Right.
We live slightly longer and healthier lives, at least according to the data.
Mm-hmm.
And even when it comes to corruption, India's ranked way better on the Corruption Perceptions Index.
It's true, yeah.
So logically, you'd think India would be happier.
You would, yeah. I mean, that's what all the traditional development indicators would suggest.
But nope, Pakistan is ahead of us in the happiness game. What's going on here?
It is a bit of a puzzle, isn't it?
That's a big puzzle.
But the report actually addresses this directly.
Oh, okay, good. What do they say?
So they point to the huge role that social factors play in happiness. The level of trust within a society, the general feeling of well-being. These things seem to matter a lot, maybe even more than just having money or a good government.
Okay, so it's not just about material wealth or even, like, efficient institutions.
Yeah.
It's about something more.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the quality of our relationships, how connected we feel to our community, how much we trust each other. These things seem to have a really big impact on how happy we are.
This is a huge point for our listeners, especially those prepping for the UPSC. When you're analyzing, how well a society is doing, you can't just look at the economic numbers or how the government's performing. You have to think about the social fabric, too.
Absolutely. It's about the whole picture, not just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. And the report actually had some really interesting findings that back this up. Like, for example, they found that in places like Mexico and some parts of Europe, the happiest households are the ones with 4 or 5 members.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. So it seems like having a strong family, a close network of people around you, that can really make a difference in how you experience life.
Yeah, it highlights the importance of those strong social bonds, those support systems that we have.
Totally. And remember that thing about the lost wallet and how likely it is to be returned?
Mm.
Apparently, there's a super strong link between that and overall happiness. Like, the more likely people are to return a lost wallet, the happier the country tends to be.
Right. Which makes sense if you think about it. It's a pretty good indicator of how much people trust each other.
Yeah. It's almost like as a measure of the social health of a nation.
Right. And there's this quote from the CEO of Gallup, John Clifton, that I think sums it up perfectly. He says, "Happiness isn't just about wealth or growth. It's about trust, connection, and knowing people have your back. Investing in one another is essential if we want stronger economies and communities."
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah. And it really speaks to this whole India-Pakistan thing, Maybe India, despite all its economic progress, maybe we're missing something when it comes to those essential social connections.
Okay, so for our UPSC aspirants, what's the big takeaway message here?
I think it's this. If you really want to understand how well a society is doing, you have to look beyond the traditional measures of progress.
You can't just focus on GDP and all that.
Right. You have to consider the social fabric, the level of trust, the strength of communities, because those things, they have a huge impact on people's lives, on their happiness.
Yeah, they're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're about how people actually feel, how they experience life.
Exactly. And for those of you who are going to be shaping India's future, this is something to really think about,
Right, right. Because if we want to build a truly happy and thriving India, we need to focus on more than just the economy.
Absolutely. We need to invest in those social bonds, in building trust, in strengthening our communities, because those are the things that ultimately make life worth living.
So, to wrap up our deep dive today, we've seen that India's happiness ranking is going up. But it's a complicated picture.
Yeah, definitely.
Happiness is this mix of economic factors, social dynamics, and how we perceive our own lives. And this whole thing with India being behind Pakistan, even though we seem to be doing better on paper, that just shows how important those social and perceptual elements are.
It really highlights the need for a more holistic approach to development.
Yeah, one that takes into account not just the material stuff, but also the human stuff, the connections, the trust, the sense of belonging.
Exactly.
So it leaves us with a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Right? Especially for those of you getting ready for the UPSC. What are some of the things we might be overlooking when it comes to building a happier and more cohesive India?
It's a question worth pondering, definitely. It challenges us to think outside the box, to go beyond the traditional solutions, and really consider what it takes to create a society where everyone can flourish.
Absolutely. So if you found this deep dive helpful for your UPSC prep, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us your questions and comments below. We based our discussion today on the World Happiness Report 2025. It's covered by the Times of India and the Indian Express.
And don't forget to check back in for our next deep dive.
Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Bye.